Awesome. Well, Trey, thank you so much for being here and taking time on your day off. Congrats on an awesome game last night, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you guys for coming today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to start off, obviously, we're here for a reason, but really want to have the community and everyone listening to this really understand you, your mentality. I know I've seen relentless thrown out there, but where did you develop that mindset and at what age?
Yeah, relentlessness, resiliency. I think that's a mentality that I had to develop at a very young age. When I was 15 years old, my mom suddenly died. And at that age, man, I sort of had an option, grow up, honor her in the way I live my life, and just keep pursuing my passions. I made a promise to her that, one, I'm gonna receive my degree, and the second is I'm gonna play in the National Football League. So ultimately, the way I pursued the things I did in my life, I was always relentless. I always wanted to pursue it at the highest level. I always wanted to be at my best.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel the same, and I think it's something that it plays into what you've gone through, and obviously coming out of high school, being a five-star recruit, incredible, and we always know that that's when life likes to throw you curveballs. Yep. So talk to me about that experience, going in on such a high to Tennessee, and then receiving some news that you definitely weren't prepared for.
Yeah, going into Tennessee, the five-star, #1 overall player on ESPN, really blessed and fortunate. I had some things and troubles in my life that I had to deal with. Had a great freshman season at Tennessee. Made all SEC, all freshman, all American, pretty much all the accolades you can get at that point. And then going into my second season and off season, was doing the off-season program and was doing very well at one point, and then a couple weeks later, it's like, man, I couldn't even finish a rep. And very frustrated in the fact that I didn't really know what was going on. I never had issues with my body, never had issues with my breathing. So, talking to the doctors, they're like, okay, maybe you have an upper respiratory infection, maybe something's going on in that aspect. Just kept going through it, and then, I talked to my doctor. I'm like, hey, doc, it's been 2 days. I've lost over 13 pounds. Wow. I don't feel right, man. Is there any other tests, any things that we can do? And he talked about a blood test. He's like, it's unlikely, Trey, that you have this, but we're going to check your D-dimer rate in your blood for potential of having blood clots. And so go through the test. I remember walking to class. I was so sick that maybe it was like 400 yards from my dorm to the library. It wasn't that far, and I had to stop maybe 3 to 4 times just to catch my breath. And just understand, like, okay, this is something I've never experienced, something's off, and lo and behold, right that afternoon, I get another phone call saying that you have tested positive for blood clots, and your D-dimer rate's high. So that was sort of, it was a scary thing. It's odd to say this. It was a relief in a way to me because I knew that there was something else, there was something off in my body, and I knew something was off. But understanding that, okay, I have blood clots, and the next scary thing was like, what does this mean to my health?
Yeah, I think that was what it was for me. It's like, okay, you have a pulmonary embolism. Like, I don't even know what a pulmonary embolism is. Like, what does that mean? So yeah, I think that's part of why I'm so passionate. I know it's why you're passionate about sharing the stories. Yep. People shouldn't have to say, what is a pulmonary embolism, right? You should know what that is. You should know what the signs and symptoms are. Talk to me a little bit about kind of that feeling. Like you said, it's relief. I felt the same way. I'm like, there's something wrong with me. I feel crazy. Was there a level of kind of the time period of first having those symptoms and the diagnosis? Did you feel crazy? What were the feelings going on?
Yeah, you're spot on. Just sort of just feeling like, man, am I losing it? Because 1 week you're killing everything. You're doing the conditioning at a high level. You're having no issues at all, and then you're getting so weak to the point you can't do a push-up, can't do a sit-up. I can barely do the weight I'm doing, and it was frustrating because just like I know what I'm capable of, but it was shocking. Just like, okay. My body's not responding the way it always has. Yeah. So when I say it was relief, like you just said, it's like, okay, I understand something was off in my body. At least now I know what it is.
Yeah, because for so many years, you're like, okay, I can push through it. It's going to suck. It's painful, but you can push through it. And this is like the one thing that your body's like, nah, you're not pushing through it. So you get the diagnosis. What are your thoughts? What mentally are you thinking at that point?
Yeah, just fearful. I've never had a surgery. I've never been in a hospital in any capacity for myself. So just sitting there in the just in the hospital room itself, just really nerve-wracking, man. Just didn't know what it meant for my football career, didn't know what it meant for my health. My dad, University of Tennessee is about 5 hours away from my home, so having to call him, giving him the news without having him panic or freak out, It was just sort of a scary experience. Luckily, my sister was on staff at the University of Tennessee, so she was able to be there very fast when I first got to the hospital. So just a level of comfort being around her, but ultimately it was just the fear of the unknown that what I was about to face.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know how it was for you, but you have that mentality of, this is your livelihood, right? Playing football, it's who you are, it's who defines you. And my first thought was, okay, well, is this going to affect my swimming? I wasn't thinking, 100,000 people die from this every year, I may be dying.
Yeah.
Did you have that similar experience, or what were your thoughts around that?
Yeah, just seeing like an athlete, like you just said, man, when can I get back out there?
Yeah.
What's my timeline of return? What's the plan going forward? I think it just took the doctors talking to me a little bit more just to be like, okay, this is a little bit more severe than I really initially thought. But initially it was just how fast can I get back to the field? Yeah.
And I think this is the piece that I'm the most passionate about. There's certainly the physical side, getting better, getting on a treatment plan, consulting with your doctors. But I think, the mental side of it, of the toll that it takes on an athlete, someone who's just, going about their day and has a, 9-to-5 job. Talk to me about the mental side of things after the fact.
Yeah, I think mentally it disturbed me a lot, being quite honest with you. The medical plan that we took at the University of Tennessee was something that hadn't been done before, especially being an offensive lineman. In my position as an offensive guard, I'm getting a lot of contact every single play.
Yeah.
And that was like the biggest concern, is just like, how are we gonna make this plan work going forward? Obviously, I wanted to pursue my career of playing football. I wanted to be an NFL football player. It was something that's very near and dear to my heart, as a promise I made to my mom.
Yeah.
And for me, whatever it took, I wanted to make it. So it was just a lot of hurdles to jump, man. Just understand, okay, one, this thing that we're attempting hasn't been done before. There's so many risks involved. Ultimately I had to walk by faith and not by sight. And for me, I really relied heavily on my faith and my experiences with my religion. So for me, just being very prayerful, being very thoughtful, just being very intentional on my day-to-day approach and how I did myself, like being intentional when I take my medicine, when in time to come off of it, the different regimens that I had to do to be successful. But for me, it was really scary, to be honest with you.
Yeah, really scary, especially, to have someone say like, oh, we've never done this before, but you'll be all set.
Right.
That's terrifying. I'm just curious, what was the plan that was different that they hadn't done before?
Yeah, so initially when I got my first diagnosis, I was on Xarelto for about 5 to 6 months. And then after that, they let me go. So it was in 2018 when I had the clots. I'm trying to make a better timeline for people to understand. 2018, beginning of the season, I have the episode. 5 months later, I'm cleared to play for the season. So at that point, they were saying, just take an aspirin and then you're just playing. So I wasn't on blood thinner anymore. By the midpoint of the 2018 season, I was having a lot of upper respiratory symptoms, coughing, wheezing, things of that nature. Ended up going to the hospital again. They determined I had blood clots again. So at that point, thinking the football career is over, just sad about that, but they determined that the scans weren't seeing a reoccurrence of blood clots. They were seeing scar tissue in my lungs.
Yep.
So at that point, it's like, okay, we're playing around with the ideas. Okay, the last plan, not as confident in it. Let's try this next regimented plan. So I was on an intermittent dosage plan where I would take blood thinners throughout the entire week. I wouldn't practice. The day before the game, we played on Saturday. I would take my blood thinners Friday morning, and then I would be able to play on Saturday. So it was pretty crazy.
That's crazy. You're already having to hurl your body at people, and you're also thinking about, the fact that it could happen again.
Yep.
Were you, obviously football is the number one priority, but was there kind of a piece of your mind that you would go into games being worried that if you did your job correctly, that you could have a reoccurrence?
I think so sometimes. I think that was the biggest thing for me, is just that the fear of the unknown. Can it happen again? Ultimately, we had a great plan going forward, but it was just the fear of the unknown. I didn't want a reoccurrence. For me, that was pretty much it at that point. As an athlete, just thinking about my career, knowing that this sickness, this illness that I've never known existed, something that I never really considered holding me out. You think about something in football, a physical injury. You don't really think about, something internal like blood clots. So it was just that was always in the back of my mind, but ultimately I had to rely on my religion.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like it was tough? The people around you, obviously your doctors, your coaches, your family had your back, but did you feel like your teammates and people understood what was going on, or were you constantly having to explain yourself?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Obviously, University of Tennessee's medical staff did a phenomenal job being with me every step of the way, making sure my family and I were confident in our plan and our approach. Teammates were great, especially close O-line friends, being supportive, making sure I was all right. I would say just in the general public, just sort of just teaching people what I had. A lot of people didn't understand what blood clotting, I really had, just explaining to people and breaking it down for them. That can be tough sometimes because, it is something that is a little bit personal to me. But ultimately, I didn't mind it because I just wanted to bring more awareness to it. I felt like a lot of people didn't fully understand it. And when I explained it to them, the level of understanding was a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the most rewarding things. I think up until that point, though, I know for me, like, you're an athlete, you're relentless, you're trying to be tough. And so there's this feeling of like, well, what if people think that, like, oh, I'm just not being tough enough?
Right.
And so I think that the education piece, and once people understand it, once you learn more of the stats, you're like, oh my gosh, like going into this, I had zero idea that 100,000 people die every year. I had no idea that that's something. I think it's something that's a cause, but people don't even realize that that's the cause of it. So, I'm so happy that you're here and sharing your story. I think from my standpoint, as a female, learning the stats of even when a female goes into an ER, the amount of misdiagnoses that happen just because she's not taken as seriously, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. So being able to educate doctors and physicians around that. I learned a stat that there's a 60% higher incidence of blood clots in a black individual versus a white individual. So I don't know if you knew that stat, but wanted to hear your thoughts and kind of why it's important for you to be able to share your story.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when I had my situation, we were testing for, genetic traits and factors in my blood that caused it. And my older sister, that was the first thing I told her. I said, just go get tested. I just want to make sure she's okay. And, those stats just sort of backs up what I was thinking in my mind. Just wanted to make sure she's safe, want to make sure she's well taken care of, because those statistics are frightening.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, people deserve to be taken care of well, and treated equally as well. So that was the biggest thing for me, is just making sure there's more awareness, and like I said, going back to those statistics, we can do a better job at that and making sure everyone's well taken care of.
Absolutely. What do you feel like needs to be done in terms of, bringing the right awareness, education, understanding the signs and symptoms, all of those things that are going to save lives?
Yeah, I just think the more awareness that we can bring, the more people we can reach, ultimately the better it's going to be. Like you said, just doing more research myself. For me, I'll go to football. Just seeing upper echelon players that are affected by this.
Yeah.
I don't want to bring, name drop too many people, but in terms of offensive linemen, people that are in the same position I am, for me, I was looking at guys like Russell Okung, David Andrews, seeing guys that are affected by it and understand, okay, it's not just me that had this situation. And the powerful thing about it is just there have been so many different players, people have reached out to me, not even just football players, people in like Jackson, Tennessee, my community, that have come to me and their wife had blood clots, or their kid had blood clots, okay, this coach's son has blood clots, and they're asking me, okay, what did you do to get through these circumstances, these situations? And I think it's so powerful that I can be a resource to people to go through this with, that they don't have to go through it alone, that they're not the only ones affected, Yeah. So I think that's like the best part about it, is just bringing awareness as much as I can.
Yeah, it becomes like the silver lining of something that, is a curveball in your life, and it's terrifying, it's awful, but now being able to be the person to turn to, I know for me is really rewarding.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, when it comes to now your career, obviously you are crushing in the NFL. I'm just curious, is it something that you still think about? How often is it on your mind, or are you just laser focused on the job you're doing right now?
Yeah, I think that fear is still always in my mind. Like I alluded to earlier, I try not to think about it. I have faith in the plan that we have. The approach that the Chiefs took was very detailed. They were very detailed in the draft process. They did their due diligence in the draft process. And I have complete and total faith and confidence in their doctors and medical team as well. But I would say, that doubt, it's still always in the back of your mind. As a competitor, you try not to think about it, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't.
Yeah.
But I think at this point in my life, I've stepped past it, I've cleared past it. And at this point, I want to bring more awareness to help people.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yep.
in terms of people who maybe don't have, a really awesome staff and support team and doctors, there's so many people out there that just don't have those resources. What would be your advice to them?
I would say just, do as much research be as knowledgeable as you can. That was the biggest thing for me. As soon as I got my diagnosis, just like, okay, what you want on Google is just like, yes, what does this mean? What is this? So just try to be as informed as you can be. Also know that the thoughts and the perception of blood clots is changing rapidly as well. That for me was probably the biggest thing. It was just like, at one point, if I got this diagnosis years ago, this would be it.
Yeah.
But I just think the medical world is changing in that aspect. There's a lot of different things that are going on with it, and just be confident, Be confident that you can get through it. You're going to get through it, Just be safe with it. But it's not the end of the world. You have people that have gone through the same experiences as you, and there are different avenues and resources that you can reach out to.
Yeah, absolutely. I say the always thing I go back to is like trust your gut. You know how you feel. If something feels off, go in, which is what you obviously did. So I scream that from the rooftops, because I think a lot of times people just are like, oh, I'm fine, I'll brush it off. I need to be tough, right? And I think that's, no, go in. It's always better safe than sorry. So I think that's a great message. Anything else that you want to share, or anything else that you want to talk about that's a part of your story that you think would be really impactful?
I'm running a blank right now, I'm sorry.
No, it's good. I think, honestly, what you've shared, thank you so much for being so vulnerable. It's really hard to sit there and talk about some really scary moments in your life, and moments where you have fear. And again, I think going back to, anyone, but as an athlete, you are trained from, yay high to be like, just tough it out, just go through it, don't say anything. And so for someone like you to be able to share that and say it can literally happen to anybody, you're going to touch the lives of millions and save hundreds of thousands of lives. So we're just very thankful at the National Blood Clot Alliance, and thankful for the time.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.